Oh, was I asleep? Startled, I sat up and glanced at the watch on my wrist. It was past 10 p.m. Oh no, will I make it to the last train? I wondered, noticing the absence of people around. Then I resumed my work. Suddenly,
Good job today.
I heard a woman's voice. It surprised me, as I thought I was alone, and this workplace was supposed to be all men. Wondering if I was so tired I was hearing things, I looked towards the direction of the voice. To my astonishment, it wasn't a hallucination or an illusion. There indeed stood a woman. Mrs. Boss, what brings you here? My name is Tyler Johnson. Right after graduating from middle school, I started working at a local hardware store. And it's been 10 years. Initially a part-timer, I was promoted to full-time after turning 20 and have been here ever since. Despite being a middle school grad and it being my first job, I learned the ropes over 10 years and have become a mid-level employee in a workplace that used to be older folks. The work environment is good, and so are the perks. I thought I'd continue working here. Then, one day, when I least expected it, I found a chance to change my career.
Good job, Tyler.
I was working until closing that day, and the cash register was short, so I let the student part-timers and other staff leave and was counting the money alone. Then the manager, who must have been in the office, came over. I've been under his care since I joined, and he's been like a father to me, being around the same age as my parents. It's not an exaggeration to say that he's the reason I could lead a normal life after a troubled past. Good job, manager. Didn't know you were still here. I stopped my work and greeted him. He said,
I wanted to talk to you, Tyler.
Which surprised me a bit. It wasn't uncommon for him to invite me for a meal or have casual chats, but it was the first time he said he wanted to talk about something serious. I was really curious, but waited until we finished the work in about 30 minutes. We went back to the office, made some coffee, and finally, he started talking about the main topic.
It's been 10 years since you joined us, Tyler. You've grown into such a fine person, and I'm really proud of you.
The manager said this with a somber look, which made me think, is the manager retiring? It would make sense if he was waiting to tell me about his retirement, given how things had been lately. I had always assumed the manager would always be here, so suddenly feeling his absence made me incredibly sad. But then, he said something I totally didn't expect.
Tyler, have you ever thought about changing jobs?
I was so surprised. I hadn't considered this even for a fraction of a second. Then, all I could muster was a feeble. The manager continued, seeing my shock.
No, I'm not firing you or anything. You're always so bright and sharp, and we have many regular customers who look forward to seeing you. You've been great with guiding the younger staff too. You're a crucial part of this place, no doubt about it.
The manager isn't one to flatter or lie. I know that from our 10-year relationship. So, I believe what he's saying now is genuine. But if that's the case, why suggest I leave? My skepticism must have shown on my face. The manager, noticing my expression,
I'm really sorry for bringing this up so suddenly,
apologized and continued with his proposal.
I have a childhood friend. We've been close since elementary school. We've both married, started families, and remained important to each other even as we near 60. His company's been facing difficulties lately. They're short on young staff, and despite trying to hire new employees, they aren't getting many applicants. As a result, the staff is aging, and he's considering closing down the business. I know it's presumptuous of me, but Tyler, with your energy, seriousness, and sense of responsibility, I believe you could help turn his company around. We'll definitely offer you better pay and benefits than what you have now. So please, could you lend your skills to help him?
As he spoke, the manager's hands were slightly trembling. Changing jobs is a significant life decision. He must feel a great sense of responsibility about what he's suggesting. I was certainly surprised, but when the manager I'd been indebted to for 10 years asked me for this favor, my answer was already clear. Manager, please lift your head. You've taken care of me for a decade. If there's anything I can do, just let me know. Hearing my words,
Really? Are you sure?
he asked in a voice mixed with surprise and joy. Yes, I'd like to help, I affirmed. I'd never changed jobs before, and it would be a lie to say I wasn't anxious. But seeing the manager's happy face made all those worries seem insignificant. I felt motivated to give back in this way. So, a month later, I switched jobs. The new company was a factory manufacturing precision machinery. I had no prior knowledge, but the manager assured me I'd be taught everything I needed to know. The president, Mr. Anderson, who was the manager's childhood friend, seemed to be a very kind and interesting person. I was really looking forward to meeting him. However, to cut to the chase, I never got to meet Mr. Anderson. By the time I joined, the president had already been replaced due to illness, making it difficult for him to continue. I wondered if the manager knew about this, and if he did, he'd surely be worried. And as for the new president, it seemed that Mr. Anderson's son had taken over. His name is Michael, perhaps to distinguish him from his father. Everyone called him President Michael or Michael. He was 31 years old, not much older than me. Since he was the son of the manager's beloved friend, I thought we would surely get along. But it didn't take long for me to realize I was wrong. President Michael, despite being the president, visited the site daily and took charge personally. While this was admirable for a president, the way he managed work was notoriously bad. And I, too, could feel it. Even though President Michael should have known I was new and unfamiliar with the detailed job requirements, he seemed indifferent. He assigned me tasks I didn't know how to do, and when I couldn't do them, he would say things like, "How could you join our company without knowing this?" And this is what happens with high school dropouts, in a condescending tone. I knew I was in a completely different industry, so I didn't expect to know everything right away. I was studying on my own to become as competent as quickly as possible after the job change. But still, when I actually started working on site, I realized it wasn't all by the book. I wanted to gain practical experience and improve. But President Michael hardly acknowledged this. He would say,
"I thought I'd test what use a high school dropout could be, but it seems there's no need. You're obviously slow and incompetent. It figures, considering who brought you here. Birds of a feather flock together."
He'd mock. He showered me with such words daily, looking down on me. And from what I overheard, he even ridiculed his own father, Mr. Anderson. Other employees mentioned that Michael had always despised the factory since his student days. Who would want to take over this shabby factory? Continually saying. However, with Mr. Anderson's recent health issues and the lack of a successor becoming a serious problem, Mr. Anderson, caring deeply for his company and its many employees, had to lower his head to his son, Michael. "If you take over, you can do anything you want. I'll leave everything to your methods. Just please carry on the legacy," he begged him, under the condition that he could run everything his own way without any interference. Michael accepted the role of president. Hearing this, everything made sense. Despite his incredible arrogance and tyranny, no one dared to speak out. And now I understood why. Even with the worst kind of president, without him, the company would end. Everyone knew this, and that's why no one opposed him. As for me, I had only recently changed jobs and didn't have any special attachment to this company. If I wanted, I could probably return to the hardware store I worked at before. Given the situation, it seemed reasonable to quit right away. But I didn't want to betray the expectations of the manager who had referred me. That thought alone kept me going. I was constantly faced with unreasonable work schedules and degrading insults that negated my humanity. On top of that, I was forced to work overtime without extra pay, and my health deteriorated rapidly. For the manager, this became my mantra, the only thing keeping me alive day after day. However, one day, while working overtime, I fell asleep, or rather, it might be more accurate to say I passed out. I lost consciousness not at my desk, but while working in the factory, a place where I would never normally fall asleep if I had enough rest and was in good health. That's how exhausted I was. When I woke up, it was about 3 hours later. Oh, was I asleep? I wondered in surprise as I sat up and checked the watch on my wrist. It was past 10 p.m. Oh no, will I make it to the last train? I thought, noticing the absence of people around. Then I resumed my work. Suddenly,
"Good job today."
I heard a woman's voice. It surprised me, as I thought I was alone, and this workplace was supposed to be all men. Wondering if I was so tired I was hearing things, I looked towards the direction of the voice. To my astonishment, it wasn't a hallucination or an illusion. There indeed stood a woman. Mrs. President, why are you here?" Standing there was the wife of President Michael, I had greeted her maybe twice when she visited with Michael, but we had never really had a conversation. She mentioned being about my age, but with the title of Mrs. President and her very composed demeanor, she seemed much more mature. Thinking that if Mrs. President was here, Michael might be as well, I looked around anxiously. If it was known that I had fallen asleep here, I couldn't imagine what would be said. Though, considering I wasn't getting paid for overtime, I felt they had no right to complain. Then Mrs. President said,
My husband isn't here. It's just me right now.
I felt relieved. But why are you here in a place like this? I wondered. Unexpectedly, she responded,
I thought I'd come to help.
What? I replied, startled. Without waiting for my response, she effortlessly resumed the work on the machine next to me. Operating these machines is simple once you learn, but initially understanding their structure takes time. I had just managed to learn, but watching her handle the machine with such ease, without any prior explanation, was astonishing. Even if she occasionally visited with Michael, learning just by watching seemed quite difficult. Seeing my surprised expression, Mrs. President chuckled. Then she revealed,
Actually, I worked here until last year.
I was even more surprised. She explained that she started working here right after high school for 7 years. She met Michael when he visited the factory, and they married after he fell in love with her at first sight. I see. You're my senior then. I had no idea. I had been a bit wary of her, assuming she might be as intimidating as her husband, but I found her very approachable. Having someone more experienced than me helping made the work go smoother and was more enjoyable than working overtime alone. I felt I should probably be more aware of the propriety of having the president's wife help with the work, but it turned out to be a great time. But did you come here just to help me with overtime? I asked, curious if she had other reasons. I was concerned that my needing help might be causing her inconvenience. Her response was even more surprising.
I knew you were working overtime, so I came to help, as a way to say thanks for the past.
For a moment, I misunderstood her, but then I snapped back to reality when she mentioned a favor from the past. A favor? I couldn't recall any reason why the president's wife would be thanking me, especially since we hadn't really interacted before today. But then, she revealed something unexpected.
Don't you remember me? I'm Emily, the girl who used to live next door to you.
That was the biggest shock of the day. What? Emily? Emily was my childhood friend who lived next door from kindergarten through middle school. While other girls were scared of my wild behavior, Emily always treated me kindly. But she moved away after middle school, and we lost touch. She had changed so much, becoming slimmer and more mature looking, that I hadn't recognized her until now. But now that she mentioned it, I could see her resemblance in her face to the girl I once knew. Are you really Emily?
Yes, you didn't recognize me, which was kind of funny, but also a bit sad.
She laughed and replied. Her smile indeed reminded me of the girl she was back then. I'm sorry. I never would have guessed you'd become the president's wife. Emily responded to my words.
I never imagined I'd end up like this either. He was very kind before we married, and I was so happy, I just went along with it. But now, he treats me the same way he treats you. Sometimes I wonder if it was the right choice.
I had always thought of Emily as someone who had it all, but this moment made me realize that people often have burdens they don't show on the surface.
But forget about me. You always helped me when I was bullied in elementary school, right? I was such a coward, and I had no special skills to pay you back. But since I'm more experienced in this factory, I thought I could help you.
Emily said with a smile and resumed her work. That's an old story. I had completely forgotten about our childhood days, but her mention brought back nostalgic memories. It was touching to know that she remembered and felt grateful for those times. Emily didn't help with overtime every day, but she did frequently, which not only sped up the work, but also helped me learn faster with her one-on-one guidance. However, one day, while Emily was helping me with overtime, Michael showed up.
I thought you were out at night. And here you are, Emily. What are you doing?
He said angrily.
Just working, as you can see. I've told you before when I left.
Emily replied. Indeed, she was just helping me with work. There was nothing inappropriate about it. Far from any behavior that could be deemed suspicious, there wasn't even a hint of such an atmosphere, so I myself had no feelings of guilt. But from Michael's perspective, his wife meeting another man at night, even for work, might have seemed objectionable. I realized this only when the situation escalated. Michael, unable to contain his emotions, tried to take Emily away.
Who are you talking back to? Women don't need to work. Just stay at home and obey me. Ouch. Let go.
Emily protested as Michael raised his hand to her, so I intervened. I had heard complaints from Emily before, but I never imagined it would go this far. Was this domestic violence? I'm sorry. I assure you there's nothing suspicious, but it was wrong of me to involve the president's wife in work. Please calm down, I said, but then felt a strong blow to my cheek. I was struck, bewildered.
You think I'd be jealous of a high school dropout like you? Know your place.
Michael yelled. I'm sorry, was all I could say, realizing arguing was futile. Emily then exclaimed,
Enough. I can't believe you're resorting to violence not just against me but an employee. Do you think the world revolves around you? I want a divorce. I can't stay with you.
She took me to the office, providing ice for my cheek. The commotion alerted the neighbors, who called the police, and we were all questioned. I was quickly released, but Michael and Emily faced more serious issues regarding their divorce and domestic violence. Eventually, Michael was forced to step down as president, and the former president, though ill and unable to come to the factory, resumed the role in name. The factory, with a tight-knit crew and experienced staff, runs smoothly without a president, free from the oppressive schedules of Michael's tenure. As for me, the manager, having heard the details, asked if I wanted to return. But I decided I'll stay here a bit longer. I could always go back, but having endured this trial, I wanted to keep facing challenges. Working in a familiar place with stability is, of course, a good thing, but it felt good to grow stronger through new experiences and overcoming setbacks. After divorcing Michael, Emily returned as an employee. The once timid neighbor girl, now a confident senior, guides me at work. Both of us made brave decisions to start new in our lives. Such encounters, I believe, are part of the joy of life.